I'll read the key lesson to you. The proof that every moment, including the most painful of them, is unlimited in its divine possibility is that one soul perishes for the fear of them while another soul is perfected and liberated by the same. The proof that every moment, including the most painful of them, is unlimited in its divine possibility is that one soul perishes for the fear of them while another soul is perfected and liberated by them. Simply put, that means that every single moment of our life holds within it, if you will, a kind of how was that put? I came upon a fork in the road and I took the one that was least traveled. Every moment of our life offers what we could call the possibility of further realizing the fulfillment of the purpose of our life on this planet, or deepening the sense of futility that most of us have all the time, that we are not fulfilling the purpose of our existence. This talk, which is basically intended to help us cultivate this garden of the soul, this garden of faith, is all based in these ideas that we know in our heart of hearts we're meant to be, to live a more, call it what you will, a more complete life, or let's say it the other way around, as it most likely is experienced by us, a life that isn't so full of conflict. I don't know how well you are, adept you are at being able to see it. Most of what we call waiting for moments to take place, waiting for this chat to start, waiting for the meeting we need, waiting for the announcement about our finances or about our family. Most of those moments, if they're not filled with some form of expectation of a fearful kind, then there's a tension in them because we're hoping that what we want to take place will go down the way we want it to go down. And there's stress in that. It's almost incomprehensible to us that there is the possibility of a life where our familiar stress and fear, our anxiety or our frustration, where all of those familiar states no longer serve as they've always served, which is to provide the feeling that we're stuck in another situation that we have to struggle our way through. And instead of that constant stress, a completely different relationship with it. No moment in life, and I don't care whatever its nature, no moment in life isn't designed to be part of our preparation for discovering in ourselves this divine ability to take whatever the moment brings, to transcend it, and in transcending what that moment brings up in us, to realize the possibility of living in a relationship with every moment by which our proper understanding of it lifts us above that moment. Now, what is the nature of these moments that disturb us? Let's be clear, because I haven't seen anybody post since then. How many of you know that life is mostly disturbance, not delight? At least that's our perception of it. Please, if you will, on the board. How constant is the disturbance? Even getting ready to go out for a good time. I don't know if you've noticed it. Packing to go someplace is full of anxiety. So what is it in us that's so readily disturbed? What is it in us that's so readily disturbed? Have you ever wondered about it? Or do we just take the reaction to be the proof that there's something in us that needs things to be other than they are? What is disturbed in us is the past. You could call it expectations, Frida, but what are expectations other than identification with something we're hoping to happen or hoping doesn't happen? Moments that we don't want because they disturb the past. And what is the past? The past is who and what we have been up until that moment. And I would add, not just who and what we have been, not just what we are identified with and have brought forward with us into the present moment. But when I say the who and what we have been, I'm talking about human consciousness, because you and I do not exist. We do not have a consciousness outside of human consciousness. And consciousness, that consciousness so rooted in the past, so identified with the images that has given us and this human nature its identity, politically, religiously, financially, environmentally, socially, across the board, that this body of thought, which has been so crystallized, and you and I so formally locked into its rigidity, when something comes along in the present moment and brings into that crystallized consciousness anything that causes it to have a tremor because it's resisting whatever that moment is revealing. Why? Because it's not part of how things should be, meaning not the way I have been and need things to continue being. So that in that moment, we discover that that moment that we ordinarily want to avoid, that disturbance, is actually a moment in which, as they say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Because ideally, what is the student? The student is the part of us that aspires to awaken and to become a truer, more kind human being. And what is the teacher other than the moment that shows up, that unfolds the way it does? And as it does, it brings to light within us the fact that the image we have of ourselves as being someone who is good and kind and loving is just that, not the thing itself. It's a sensation of self that we delight in when nothing is challenging it. But the moment that any condition comes along that's contrary to this consciousness past, this body of thoughts and feelings, the moment they're triggered, everything that lies latent in them, which is our identification and our dependency upon these images, now suddenly it goes into the protective mode. It starts to push and pull in one way or another. So to get through this first part, to understand that the moment of that revelation of who and what we have been, the reaction that we have to any moment we don't want is the revelation of the consciousness that doesn't want it. The reaction we have to any moment we don't want is actually the revelation of the consciousness that doesn't want it. And any part of our consciousness that doesn't want what is present and acting upon us as part of the fulfillment and movement of life, any part of us that resists that obviously lives outside of that movement, and therefore is in constant conflict with any part of that movement. And we don't see this because we're so instantly identified with this protective consciousness, trying to make sure that what it wants and believes it must have, possess, is necessary to it. So as fleeting as that moment may be, and really it's an awakening that I'm going to get into. I'm going to give you 3 particular steps here to help develop this idea of nourishing the soul, of what it means to not just use the moment as it's given, but to use the moment as it's given to give ourselves a new life, because it is being given to us in that moment by another order of being. Sometimes those moments come, and I hope that you'll agree with me. Sometimes here comes a moment, and I can be shocked right to my socks with what I see. I mean, sometimes, every once in a while, those moments of awakening come and they're so special, we wish that time would stop. We see the beauty of that sunrise. We see the massive cloud formations. We see the child delighted with joy, dancing for no reason whatsoever, a puppy running in circles, some noble creature, a deer, a horse running across a field. Those moments in that's an awakening, isn't it? And it's awakening to something that was latent within us that suddenly realizes it has some corresponding connection to that, which that beauty, that strength, that nobility. We love that. There's no shock in that. We can't swallow it enough. But what about those moments when, shockingly, we see, as life does show us, that within us there is something that we don't want to see at all? Split second of a revelation where instantaneously that that moment has brought up inside of us, is revealing through a reflection something we didn't realize is true about ourselves. I had no idea that I could be that angry, that I could be that hostile, that conflicted, that I could turn in the drop of a hat, as I just spoke about last week. That what I call this love I have for someone can turn in a heartbeat into something that's hideous. How is that possible? We're describing it because all of this content lays buried within us, and all of it, in order for us to transcend it, must be revealed. And that's what these moments that we don't want do, is they bring in a split second of a realization that, I would add, marks either the beginning of a new kind of faith or the strengthening of a fear, a certain realization about ourselves that either marks the beginning of a completely different order of faith or crystallizes the fear that we realize in that moment, one way or the other, there is no self separate from the consciousness that is stirred, the sense of self that is brought up in that moment. That those moments and every moment is the sudden revelation of our own consciousness as being inseparable from what is being reflected in it. No me apart from you. No self outside of that situation. That the whole source of our suffering lies in this unconscious duality that this present consciousness is the keeper of. And then we have these moments, but don't recognize them as being such, of a sudden spiritual realization of a singularity that we are, where what the moment brings cannot be separated from what the moment reveals. And what the moment reveals is the consciousness that came into that moment, that was intended to be revealed by the action of that moment. That moment shows us there is no self that exists apart from the moment to be in fear of it. Those revelations show us there is no self that lives outside of whatever it is that is being revealed within it. No self outside of what is being revealed within it. That is where our true hope lies. Because in one respect it's unseen, but suddenly it is given to us to see, and it is what we do in these moments with what we're given to see that determines everything for us. What to do when we face the devil in our mind is to understand that whatever in us that fears the devil is the devil feared. Whatever is in us that fears the devil is the devil feared. Does the light fear the darkness? Does the sun go, oh, I'm not going to rise because look at those early shadows. There's so many of them. We must understand that the dawning of this light, of every moment, which is the dawning of a certain kind of light, is a gift, an opportunity to explore and discover, if you will, the completion, the fulfillment of a consciousness that doesn't know yet its real role, its real place in life.